This talk comes as a direct continuation of Spirituality is a Question of Integrity. After that message, I was asked to go deeper, to speak not just of the idea, but of the implications and the practice of what true spiritual integrity demands. We live in a time when the language of spirit is loud, but the practice of integrity is faint. Across continents, the word spirituality is everywhere, but accountability, honesty, and clarity often disappear the moment power and access are at stake. Too many people have learned to perform holiness while quietly exploiting the hungry. Too many seekers have been made to feel like outsiders at their own ancestral table. This message is not about theatrics or empty rebellion. It is born out of lived experience, repeated encounters with gatekeeping, inflated hierarchies, and the commercialization of access to spirit. It comes from the tension between remembering who we are and being told that what lives in our blood must be rented back to us at a cost. And here's the blunt truth. We cannot keep building our spiritual lives on something that is not ours, and that we are forced to keep buying into. Spirit is alive in us here. We are not spiritual exiles unless we choose to be. My loyalty is to those on this side of the Atlantic, not to those who have already chosen their stance on the African continent. They are selling. We must decide whether we can afford to buy and whether we even need to. Because when we buy, it does not lead to self-sustenance. It leads to dependence. And that is exactly the design. A lifetime of customers. We, as priests, priestesses, devotees, servants of the unseen, must ask ourselves plainly, are we loyal to a system or to spirit itself? To the supreme source, by whatever name we call it. If we claim to stand between the seen and the unseen, then we must clean ourselves first. We are not perfect, but integrity gives us a spine. And with that spine, we will fare better than we are now. This is about reclaiming alignment, not picking fights. It is about clarity, not poetic politeness. It is about ending the quiet hunger that keeps us begging at gates that were never meant to hold us. I speak now not only as Deirdre, but as a daughter of those who were uprooted, scattered by force, ripped from their land, their names, their languages. As one who carries the breath of those betrayed twice, first by those who sold them into bondage, and again by those who now sell back their own spiritual heritage at a price. My ancestors were silenced, not because they were weak, but because betrayal and power conspired to break their lineage and bury their voice. Yet here we stand, proof that silencing failed. Their voices do not whisper anymore. It will not be softened by diplomacy or crouched in poetic language. It rises with the weight of pain carried too long and the authority of a people who have survived everything meant to erase them. There is a word we must name clearly before we go any further. Gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is when a few hold the keys to what was meant to flow to the many. It is when power is treated like private property, when wisdom is turned into currency, when the current of spirit is fenced off and sold to those who should never have had to buy it. It is when people who were entrusted to guide start deciding who is worthy of Ifa, of ancestral wisdom, of the current itself, a current that was never theirs to own. Let us be clear. Ifa is the Yoruba way of interpreting and interacting with universal energies, and they have done an outstanding job carrying that knowledge forward. But Ifa is a system. It is not the current itself. The current, the source, does not belong to any one people. Systems can be learned, but the current is already alive in us. This is what has happened to many of us in the diaspora, told to pay for what our blood already remembers, what spirit has never forgotten. And the ancestors have come to make this clear. Spirit cannot be owned. It will not be owned. It will be honored, or it will tear down every false gate built in its name. There was a time, not myth, but memory, when priesthood stood at the center of communal life. Kings and rulers bowed their heads before the shrines of those who stood guard at the spiritual gates. Priests were the first consulted before wars were waged, before lands were divided, before nations shifted. Not because they were feared, but because they were trusted to stand clean, to listen to spirit without personal agenda. But today, priesthood that once stood as shield has become a costume, posturing and posing by those who can memorize a few verses in a foreign language laced with mispronunciations. Titles have replaced service. Rituals have become currency, and the kings of this age no longer consult the priests. They bypass them altogether because trust has been broken. They look down their noses, seeing weakness and theater. If your hands are at the gate, if you are in priesthood or even a devotee with knowledge, you are not meant to block the way. You are meant to guard its purity. When priests forget their duty, distortion floods the land. This is why we are here. The ancestors who refuse silence, the diaspora who remember, and every custodian who chooses integrity over control. Not to beg for access, not to debate ownership, but to remember who we are as a people of spirit as children of a current that predates borders, tongues, and crowns. Spirit does not belong to one culture. Spirit meets us where we are. Those who truly serve it do not build gates, they build bridges. Let us speak plainly. The Yoruba are for the Yoruba, and they are unapologetic about it. They should be. That is their right. We cannot tell them how to run their house, but we must stop begging to live in someone else's yard. Our identity was born in fire, ocean, displacement, resistance. We have the right to stand on our own feet, not as petitioners at another's gate, but as people whose blood remembers its own connection to source. We have spent too long hungering after those who have already shown us what they think of us. Customers, not kin. We must align with who we are now. Spirit is alive and real. It is not limited to one soil or one tongue. It will respond to us directly, as it always has. Let me also be clear. What the Yoruba have is valid. It is theirs. It is tied to their soil, their language, their culture, their rhythm of being. We can learn from them, but we cannot and should not try to copy them. Even with the best intentions, it cannot be done exactly. And trying to do so only creates dependency and distortion. Our reality is different. We are shaped by different histories, different struggles, different soil. We adapt, not out of disrespect, but out of truth. Our ancestors kept the current alive under pressure most could not even begin to imagine. They may not have done it perfectly, but they kept it alive. We are not here to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is why my story matters. I have walked through those gates myself. I have felt what it is to be welcomed as a customer instead of as a daughter of the current. I have paid the cost, and I have learned that respect does not require surrender. And so, before we go any further, let me tell you exactly why this conversation isn't theory for me. It is lived. Let us make this real. I didn't come to these conclusions by reading a book or watching from the sidelines. I went to Ifa Heritage Institute in Nigeria with reverence in my heart. I wasn't trying to buy spirit. I wanted to sit at a well that I believed belonged to all of us. But what I met was a wall, a price tag. A local student paid 5,000 naira, about $35 for 2 years of study. I was asked for 10,000 US. I paid 2,500 US and received very little of what was promised. When I could no longer keep up, I was told to leave. And to make matters worse, the 2,500 US that I paid never reached the institution. It was kept in private hands. That was the final confirmation for me. This was not about spirit. It was about control, profit, and gatekeeping dressed up as sacred duty. What hurt most wasn't just the money, it was the message beneath it. You are not one of us. You are a resource to be used. That moment stripped away any illusions I had about belonging in spaces that see us as outsiders. It made the line clear. This isn't just about spiritual tradition. It is about power, control, and who gets to hold the gate. And I know I am not the only one. Many in the diaspora have felt the same sting, walking toward what should feel like home and finding a toll booth instead. This is why the conversation about spiritual integrity cannot be sugar-coated. Because when spirit is turned into a transaction, everyone loses. Neither human or spirit gets to move unchecked. Accountability is not a Western invention. It is divine order. Power must be clean. The current must be clean. And those who carry it must remember the source it comes from. May we stop glorifying the vessel and start honoring the current. May we remember that to handle power is to mirror its source. May both spirit and human walk in the same accountability. The enemy is not some horned figure out there. The enemy is distortion, greed, fear, ego, lack of accountability. And when those who were meant to stand guard turn their weapons on each other instead of on the distortion, we stop being protectors and start being collaborators in our own undoing. In times past, priesthood was not ornamental. Priests stood shoulder to shoulder and often above kings and rulers. Not because the world was more superstitious, but because people understood that what happens in the unseen shapes the fate of nations. Spiritual guardianship was the first line of defense, the invisible army. But over time, through betrayal, neglect, and deliberate weakening, that power was eroded. We inherited a long line of detractors and distractions. Many of us have forgotten our true purpose, and in that forgetting, we have become careless. And so, my practice, the living, breathing work of spiritual integrity, is not complicated. It is daily relationship with my own spirit. It is obedience to guidance. It is respect. It is the refusal to give away what is already mine. And it is the commitment to never become the thing I resist. Some people mistake firmness for aggression. But firmness is not violence. Fighting isn't always physical. It can be standing your ground when others expect you to kneel. It can be holding the line of dignity when others are playing power games. It can be looking both spirit and human gatekeepers in the eye and saying, I am not your slave. Let me be clear. This is not about antagonism or trying to be separate. This is about saying, if we cannot meet each other with equal respect, if we cannot honor the evolution that the Middle Passage forced, then we are doomed to repeat the same cycle. Trading in beads. In the past, beads were literal. Today, beads have become dollars, access, titles, clicks, information, contracts, initiation fees. Anything shiny that can be used to feed greed as the betrayal of spirit. Spiritual wholeness has nothing to do with spectacle or material display. Spiritual wholeness is the state in which nothing inside you is for sale. Someone can live in a one-room house and eat one meal a day and be more aligned, more peaceful, and more fulfilled than someone with titles, shrines, bank accounts, luxury cars, and a passport full of stamps. Because true wealth is not the pile of things we collect. It is the state of the soul that refuses to sell itself for those things. Wealth is not evil, but when the desire for status, image, and recognition begins to pull us away from our alignment, when material gain becomes more important than spiritual truth, that is when our integrity begins to rot from the inside. And let me also make this plain. Gatekeepers here is not only a word for individuals. It is a word for the spirit of control, the spirit of ownership and limitation itself. The spirit that feeds on fear, dependency, and hierarchy. We are not here to fight people. We are here to dismantle distortion wherever it shows up, including in ourselves. Wholeness does not come from those who claim ownership of the path. Wholeness comes from those who walk it in truth. This is an invitation to return to spiritual wholeness, to Ori, where nothing inside of you is for sale. This message isn't just for Ifa devotees. It is for anyone who has ever felt small in the presence of someone else's so-called power. Anyone who has been told that they are not enough, not chosen, not initiated, not allowed. Hear me clearly. You do not have to bow to inherit what was always yours. Your birthright does not expire at someone else's altar. Spirit will always meet those who stand in truth. We do not need to be invited into what has always belonged to us. Spirit is not for sale. Accountability is not optional. The current is clean, or it will clean itself. We either stand with integrity or get swept aside.